Right, so the stage has been set well for me really, because it goes quite nicely on from gift giving into the topic of gratitude. And as you can imagine, gratitude has a lot to do with receiving and giving of gifts. So within this session, we're going to do lots of activities, because I think sometimes the best way for you to learn about this is to have a go at it. So there's various different activities for you to kind of put gratitude into practice. The first of which involves the benefits that I have just given you. So as you arrived, I've given you a chocolate. You should have an inspirational quote as well for those of you who are on a diet or trying to be good before Christmas. I would just give up now if I were you, by the way. But if not, you've got the inspirational to quote as a benefit as well. So the first thing I want you to think about is receiving those benefits. How does it make you feel? I'd like you to think a little bit deeper that it makes me feel grateful or thankful. Think about the actual emotions. Think about if there's any sort of behaviours that might be associated with it. Are you motivated to do something? I would like you, if you can, to just think about that together. So engage with the people you're next to. If you would prefer not to, you can do it individually, but it's a nice way of meeting other people. So if you can, chat about this question with the person sat next to you for a minute or so. And if you're feeling particularly brave, then why not make use of our technology enhanced learning by posting to this Padlet. So you are allowed at this point to get out your phones. I'm assuming most people have got a phone with them. If you put this URL into kind of a Google search, you will come up with a page that should look exactly like this. And there should be in the corner a little plus sign, a pink button with a plus, and you just click that to add a comment. So it's basically like you're adding a sticky note to a wall, but you're doing it virtually. So if you're sat on your own, you can definitely do it this way, but you can still maybe accumulate your answers together and put it up there. Does this make sense to everybody? All right, so I'll just give you a minute or two to think about this and add your comments. So interesting that I've just had the last comment I just had in terms of a little bit like reciprocation, obligation. So I've given you something, you feel like you now owe me something in return. You might be more motivated to learn. A lot of you, as I was going around, were you talking about positive emotions, so you're feeling valued, you're feeling appreciative. You might just be feeling good in general, so various different positive emotions, which we do typically see. Nice to think that some of you are now feeling more welcome. So yes, we are welcoming you. So hopefully that has come across. So now that we've introduced you to gratitude, let's get down to the nitty gritty. So on the slide here is various different descriptions and definitions of what gratitude is. Some of them are a little bit more comprehensive than others. Obviously, what we were talking about then, we were talking about a lot about feelings, about how you were feeling in terms of valued and appreciative. Also, a lot of the comments you've been making are around specific behaviours. So it might be that you are now motivated, that you're doing something in return, that you want to give back. So again, this suggests that there's various different elements of gratitude. And I want to signpost really this one in the corner, which is from my own work. So sorry, I'm just plugging some of the work I've done myself. But more recent conceptions of gratitude think that it's made up of cognitions. So cognitions about when gratitude is due or warranted, is also comprised of specific emotions, so sort of feelings of gratitude. Also attitude, so certain people might have attitudes towards gratitude. That's a very common phrase now. But attitudes to gratitude involve sort of making gratitude a priority in your life, focusing on the small things, things like that. And it also has behavioural elements. So this is the idea that gratitude involves sometimes saying thank you, expressions of thanks. Not just expressions of thanks though, but also gratitude involves recognising what we have to be grateful for, the specific benefits that we have. So let's get again into a little bit more depth about what gratitude is. So I'm going to introduce you to two different terms around gratitude. The first is that we can have a state gratitude, which is basically a temporary mood. So for instance, I've just given you a benefit. You might feel temporarily uplifted, feeling in a good mood, feeling quite positive. Likelihood is that positive mood will start to fade over time. You're going to forget that I gave you a chocolate and this is all going to be a distant memory later on. So that mood, that state gratitude is a temporary thing, whilst trait gratitude is something different. This is a disposition towards being grateful. So some people are more likely to experience gratitude than other people. So they might have stronger levels of gratitude or a stronger disposition for gratitude than other people. What I want to note here is that these two things are also linked. So if you do have a disposition towards gratitude, it means that you are actually more likely to experience those states of gratitude as well. So those of you in the room, if I kind of did a gratitude questionnaire, those of you that came out with higher levels of gratitude would be more likely to experience gratitude on a more regular basis in terms of temporary moods. The reason why we think this is that people with a grateful disposition seem to look for and see opportunities for gratitude. So they are also more likely to see an opportunity and kind of interpret it as being warranting gratitude than somebody who hasn't got a disposition for gratitude. We're also more likely to make positive appraisals of things. So for instance, a grateful person might make more positive appraisals about the benefits they've received. So if they've got this inspirational quote, somebody who is particularly grateful, has a grateful disposition, will be more likely to see that as a particular benefit than somebody who hasn't. We are going to, through the rest of this lecture, focus in on sort of the cognitive aspects of gratitude. So we're going to think about the costs behind gratitude, the value of the benefits that we receive, and also the intentions that are behind the bestowal of different benefits. I keep saying benefits because I am talking about gifts, I'm talking about material things that you receive, but actually within this literature we're also talking about benefits being, say, recognition of the hard work that you've done. Something that is not a material thing but still a benefit. So, before we do the next exercise, I just want to sort of emphasise why gratitude is a topic within psychology. So it might be when the first slide came up, you thought, why on earth are we going to be looking at gratitude? That seems like a religious notion, it seems like it's old-fashioned, it doesn't seem like it will be relevant. But actually, this is a main focus of a lot of literature over the last 20 years. There are thousands of articles on the psychology of gratitude. And what we know from this literature is that gratitude fuels something called an upward spiral effect. Now, the best example I can come up with from this is the idea that you might be driving home and somebody lets you out at a really difficult junction. When you carry on your journey, you are then more likely to let somebody else out at a junction later on your travels. So you're passing on that gratitude to another person. And then that person, when they continue their journey, is again more likely to let somebody out. So you're kind of an upstream reciprocity or upward spiral of positivity, as it's been named. The other important thing to note, and links directly back to Daniel's presentation, is that gratitude feels good for the person who receives the benefit, be whatever that is, but it also feels good for the person that gives it. So it feels good for the benefactor, the person who gives the gift, and the beneficiary who receives it. So that's why we keep doing it. It also means it's related to pro-social behaviours like empathy and altruism, like Daniel started to introduce. But actually, there are some very concrete benefits that have been demonstrated in terms of gratitude being related to our mental health. So it's negatively related to things like depression and anxiety, and positively related to things like our general sense of well-being, our appreciation of life. It also helps us in terms of our sleep. We have better sleep patterns if we're more grateful. We are also more likely to be adaptive in terms of coping if we have higher levels of gratitude. Gratitude helps us, as you might imagine, to build new friendships and maintain the friendships that we have or the relationships that we have through things like gift giving. And in terms of other specific applied areas, gratitude is actually related to learning. So especially in the context we are in now, experiencing gratitude means that you sometimes this might mean, this hasn't been corroborated too many times yet, but gratitude has been positively related to academic attainment, suggesting that your marks actually might increase if you experience gratitude. How might you experience gratitude? Well, lots of ways. I am sure everybody in this room has come across one of those journals or diaries that have just got gratitude plastered all over them. And you can buy these for your friends, you can buy them for yourself, and typically you would write down, for instance, 3 things that you're grateful for on, say, a daily or weekly basis. That is one very common way of counting our blessings and practicing gratitude. Other ideas that you could engage with is sending a letter. So this idea is thinking about somebody that you're grateful for but didn't thank properly. You could write a letter, you could go one step further and actually send that letter. You could also go and visit that person. So rather than writing it down, you could go to somebody's house and tell them thank you for something that they have done. All of these things make you feel good. They also make other people feel good, the particular beneficiary. Last activity, it's going to take a little bit longer, this one. So basically this is all about getting you to think about the cognitive basics of gratitude. So I'm going to present you with 7 different scenarios, and it's your job to think about how grateful you would be if you were in that specific scenario. Now, some of these might not ring true to you. You might think, oh, that would never happen. If that's the case, you'll try and put yourself in that position and think, how grateful would I be on a scale from 0, where you're not at all grateful, to 100, which will be as grateful as you could possibly be. Again, if you would, it's best to be able to write this down so that you can come back to them. So if you're prepared with a pen and paper, you can use that. If you haven't, if you just want to write on your phone, for each of these 7 scenarios, how much gratitude you felt from 0 to 100. These have been taken from a specific measure of gratitude, but adapted to the scenario that we're in now, so that it hopefully makes a little bit more sense to you. So the first scenario is that a lecturer gives you a chocolate and an inspirational quote. Please indicate the degree of gratitude you feel from 0 to 100. Don't worry, I'm not going to take these in and compare your levels of gratitude. It's just for you to think about. So if you just write down for scenario 1, anything between 0 and 100. So, are you all right with that? Yeah. So scenario 2 starts to question the motives behind the benefaction. So now, a lecturer gives you a chocolate and an inspirational quote. She's only giving it so that you will write a positive evaluation about her lecture. Please indicate the degree of gratitude you would feel from 0 to 100. Okay. Scenario number 3. Now we're starting to think about the costs involved with bestowing particular benefits. So, a lecturer gives you a chocolate and an inspirational quote. She spent 2 hours of a Wednesday evening buying chocolate and cutting up the quotes. Please indicate the degree of gratitude you feel from 0 to 100. Okay. Next one. This one might be a little bit more strange. Some people really struggle with the kind of malicious intention. So this is the idea of, again, thinking about the intentions behind the benefit not being sort of benevolent or good in nature. So a lecturer gives you a chocolate and an inspirational quote. She's only giving it so that she can show up her other colleagues who have not given you a chocolate and an inspirational quote. How grateful would you feel from 0 to 100? Number 5. This is, again, thinking about the value of the benefit if it doesn't actually materialise in front of you. So a lecturer tries to give you a chocolate and an inspirational quote. On the day, she accidentally leaves them on the kitchen counter at home. Please indicate the degree of gratitude you would feel from 0 to 100 in this scenario. Number 6, so second to last. Now we're starting to think about whether gratitude has to be entirely positive in nature. This could be an entire lecture, but we're just going to kind of look at it very briefly. So Electra gives you a chocolate and an inspirational quote. You feel thankful but also guilty because you have already eaten a lot of chocolate today. Please indicate the degree of gratitude you feel from 0 to 100. This might actually be true for some of you, given that it is Christmas time. Okay, and our final one then is around, again, the value of the benefit. So Electra gives you a chocolate and inspirational quote. You don't like the chocolate, and you think the quote is cheesy. So you'd rather not have been given them. Please indicate the degree of gratitude you feel from 0 to 100. So even if this isn't the case, imagine as it were, and how much gratitude would you feel? Okay, so I've given you 7 different scenarios, and you might want to, or you might, if you haven't got the device or piece of paper to do this on, think about it in your head. Think about, from the numbers that you've got written down, where does the levels of gratitude increase and where does it decrease? So just have a little think about plotting your gratitude profile. It doesn't matter if you can't do it precisely. Just think about, from each scenario, does it go up or does it go down from scenarios 1 to 7? Just give you a minute to think about that. Some of you drawing on tables, that's good. It means you know what you're doing. Are we all happy with that? I haven't given you long, but you all seem like you're confident to move on. So I'm now going to present you with a typical gratitude profile. Now, this isn't exactly the same scenarios, but it's exactly the same types of scenario. So we started off with that baseline level of if you've been given a chocolate and a quote. And most people, they report a fairly high amount of gratitude that they would feel. When I say that there's an ulterior motive involved, so I've only given it them because I want a positive evaluation of this lecture, then that level of gratitude does seem to drop. That might be true for you in the room. Importantly, though, the levels of gratitude don't go down to 0. So for most people, gratitude, an ulterior motive might decrease the level of gratitude we feel, but wouldn't rule it out entirely. Then we have increased cost to benefactor. So I spent all that time cutting up the quotes and going to buy the chocolate. Most people, if there's more cost involved, would be an amplification of the level of gratitude that they would feel. The next one, the strange one, the idea that there's a malicious intention involved, that I'm trying to show other people up. We also have had examples in the literature of trying to embarrass somebody instead. Again, we see the levels of gratitude drop very significantly, but not to 0. So in this case, people seem to be focusing on the benefit they've received rather than the intention sometimes. So they can still be grateful for the benefit regardless of the intention behind it. That's why we think it doesn't go down to 0. Non-realised benefit, tried to benefit you, but I didn't. I forgot the chocolates. Most people still feel a high level of gratitude. Suggests in this case, it's the thought that counts sometimes. It doesn't just have to be the material thing. When we also feel mixed emotions, when we feel a bit of negative emotion as well, a positive emotion with gratitude, we still feel grateful, but we feel a little less grateful. So it suggests that kind of the pure gratitude, when all you feel is great, you feel kind of higher levels of gratitude. But if it's muddied with some negative feelings like guilt and indebtedness, that does decrease the level of gratitude that we experience. Last one then, you absolutely hated the benefit I gave you. Again, we see the levels of gratitude drop. And this is funny because in comparison to the non-realised benefit, in this situation, if you haven't seen value in it, maybe it's not always the thought that counts in this case. So a little bit of conflict between those two. Some references there in case you're interested. But what I want to end with is, what does this mean for gratitude? You have been thinking about your gratitude experience based on the intentions behind the gift, the cost to the benefactor, and the value. That means that you can put these to use over Christmas to think about what you are grateful for. So if you receive, and we all receive gifts that we don't like, as Daniel said, if you receive a horrible Christmas jumper, or it tends to be my case every single year, I get some kind of sparkly jewellery that is just not me, or I get some kind of horrible pair of socks, that kind of thing, happens on a yearly basis. I can still be grateful, as can you, if we focus on the intentions, the costs and the value. Another thing to remember is that gift giving feels just as good as receiving those gifts. That's, again, what Daniel was talking about in his talk. And it can lead to this upward spiral effect of positivity within the household, mostly over Christmas, till we've drank a little bit too much. Most people are in a nice, jolly mood, and that is because of this upward spiral effect of positive emotions being shared across different people. Another very important point about gratitude is that it helps to build social bonds. It helps us to bind us to other people, especially in close relationships. We know that from even biological data on gratitude leading to increases in oxytocin, and in turn oxytocin is thought to play a role in social bonding. So there is some science behind this. So that is it for me, unless anyone would like to ask me any questions about gratitude.